is all about the Merchant House Museum. This is a postcard from there. It's a postcard. Remember that picture for later. The Merchant's House Museum is located in the NoHo section of Manhattan. It was built in 1832 as a family home by Joseph Brewster. Seabury Treadwell and his wife Eliza bought the house, and they lived there with their 8 children. The youngest daughter was named Gertrude. She was 93 years old when she died in 1933. So the family had been there for 100 years from beginning to end. And when she died in 1933 in the same house that she was born, a cousin of hers decided to take the house and turn it into a museum. It was rare in New York to have a home fully furnished from that period of time in the early 1800s in New York City. People move on very quickly here. But not Gertrude. She had unfinished business, perhaps. See, when Gertrude was a young woman, she fell in love with a young man. He was a doctor, but he was a different religion than the family. So her parents, who were very strict, broke up their relationship. She was heartbroken and made a vow never to marry anyone. By 1909, she was the only person living in the house. She left everything exactly as it was and chose to live alone as a recluse. After she passed from her mortal life, the distant cousin, as I said, bought the house, bought the property and everything in it to create a museum. Gertrude perhaps never left. Why would she? Everything was there that she needed. And perhaps her heartbreak is what keeps her there. See, visitors report seeing apparitions of a woman on the stairwells and hallways, sometimes teacups. In this very kitchen are tossed around. They fly through the air and land around the kitchen and in the dining room. What's she trying to say? The bedroom where Gertrude took her last breath is frequently chilly and breezy, as if to remind visitors that they are in her house. They're in her house. I've never seen her there when I visited, but her clothing is often on display because it's not something we see nowadays. And I wonder how she feels when I look upon them. And a duck from a teacup. Got a duck from a teacup. Here's another story. At 17 Barrow Street, there is a restaurant called One If by Land, Two If by Sea, named after the Paul Revere Longfellow poem. But in the 1790s, that same building was where Aaron Burr kept his coach and horses. But by the 1890s, the building was a house of ill repute, hiding old tunnels and the detritus of horseshoes and empty bottles left by 100 years of New Yorkers. And in 1973, the building began its life as a fancy restaurant. Weddings happen there, and if I were to eat a meal there in that location, my wallet would become a ghost. It's very fancy. So who haunts this new fancy eatery now? Why, Aaron Burr's own daughter, Theodosia. Theodosia Burr was beloved by the always cranky Aaron Burr. He loved her so much. So when she disappeared on board the boat that she was on called the Patriot, this boat mysteriously vanished at sea. Was it pirates? We'll never know. But Aaron Burr was so distraught that he didn't make the best life choices afterwards. I refer you to a certain Broadway play for the whole story. Theodosia, on the other hand, enjoys bothering modern day guests. She takes earrings. I'm not wearing mine just in case she's here for today's story. She'll grab your earrings. But her dad's ghost is known to throw plates around. What a mess. Or maybe in that same place, you'll spot a Ziegfeld Follies girl who had an unfortunate accident. Or the blacksmith who used to live in the upstairs apartment. Did that picture move by itself, and did I just feel someone give me a little push? Some patrons and workers have reported these spooky moments. If you've ever been there, maybe you can tell me your own story. Or shall you decide to keep the romantic ghosts to yourself? They all seem to be quite friendly after all. Just a little tickle along with your beef Wellington. Oh, are haunted buildings not your thing? Let's take a walk over to Washington Square Park. This New York icon is one of the most haunted places in the city. Did you know it used to be a cemetery? But it was closed in 1825. The space is limited and things get paved over quickly. There's actually over 20,000 bodies buried there. Students from the nearby college have reported spooky sightings for years. In the warmest days of an overcrowded city, you can feel so suddenly chilly as you walk through the trees. Is that a shadow of some blowing branches or a former criminal walking by reflecting on their misdeeds? Is that someone cosplaying or practicing an off-Broadway scene to the thrill of an audience? Or a victim of the yellow fever epidemic rising from their grave to live another day in New York City? That's up to you to decide. Are you seeing Leah, the old Quaker woman, protecting the land from body snatchers? These things don't happen nowadays. Perhaps she continues her protective detail 200 years later. Oh, but there are stories from long ago. These stories are so long ago, 200 years or more. Who haunts this New York town from more recent years? John Campbell in Grand Central. That jazzy little bar in the corner a few floors up used to be his office. Or is that a dapper gentleman playing at nostalgia? I don't know. Do you dare to spend a night at the Hotel Chelsea? That's where Nancy Spungen spent her final days at the height of punk rock in the 1970s. Still somewhat of a mystery, so listen and maybe she'll tell you her tale. Remember the stories of all those who've come and gone. Respect the places they may haunt and remember the stories that they've told. New York City is full of spooktacular tales, and may you enjoy them as you explore or read about them for yourself. Leave them to their unfinished business and enjoy all this spooky season has in store. Be in joy among the living. I hope you enjoyed some of my spooky bedtime stories, New York City edition. If you want to know more, you can always Google. So many haunted stories, so many haunted stories. I kept out some of the more darker ones, although these are pretty dark. That's what the spooky season is for.